This is Terrence Andre Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions, coming to you again about pensions. And I've covered this topic in previous videos in the past, but because of its importance, it's always worth talking about it again. Looking at Zero Hedge, came across this article. Here are America's most underfunded corporate pensions. And why I'm really talking about this is because one of the companies that's well known is actually, this is personal for me. My father-in-law works for one of the companies they have outlined here. And as mentioned before, pensions are, as much as they're covered, but they're not covered enough, they make up a large portion of the people who consider to be in the middle class and where they usually get their funding from. But let's just take a look at some of the highlights of the article. And I would encourage you to read it from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge has a lot of advertising, so bear with me with that. But Tyler Durden does a good job of just pointing some things out. We spend a lot of time talking about the public pension crisis because, well, it's massive. $5 to $8 trillion overhang on the economy, and one which would undoubtedly result in some heartache for investors at some point in the future. Again, the key is sometime in the future, but I believe it's going to be sooner than later. Unfortunately, there are some problems that are too large for even U.S. taxpayers to fix. And with underfunding of a $52,000 midpoint per household, somehow we suspect this is one of them. Of course, our nation's various government institutions aren't the only ones to have unwittingly created massive Ponzi schemes from which there is no escape. The truth is that they are massive Ponzi schemes, and he's just bold enough to say it. It's always based on an infinite amount of return for something to happen in the future. And that's how they're based. Most pensions are. Even if they give you the underlining, believe that it's based on corporate earnings and somehow they're going to be able to pay them. The truth is they're mostly underfunded because, honestly, they shouldn't be promised in the first place. Not that the companies were doing something wrong. We're just in a different time in America, and it was based on this thing of continuous growth. In fact, as Bloomberg, that's very important, points out today, as of the end of 2016, over 90% of the top 200 corporate pensions in the S&P were underfunded to the tune of $382 billion. I'll repeat that again. In fact, as Bloomberg points out today, as of the end of 2016, over 90% of the top 200 corporate pensions in the S&P were underfunded to the tune of $382 billion. Well, look at this. Let's look at the ratios, what they have here. Maybe you might work for one of the companies, or maybe, as with me, my father-in-law is one of these companies, and he's actually reached a certain age where going back to work is not even an option. So look at this. It's 46.6% for Intel, well-known company. Delta Airlines, 49.4%. Delphi Automotive, 55.7%. American Airlines, 58.1%. 58.2% for Enerarc Petroleum. That's a resource company. Procter & Gamble, 59.4%. Well-known company there. TE Connectivity, Parker Hannifin. United Continental Holdings is 63%. 64.3% for Freeport McMoran. First Energy at 66%. The list goes on. General Electric, 67%. And Lockheed Martin, 67.9%. This is the one that stuck out the most for me, is Dupont, because this is a family member, very close to me, my father-in-law, 67.1%. That's why I really took a looking at this article, took a look at this article because of that. When I started to see that in the companies that were on, and they're just naming just the top 24 in this case, but there's definitely more, as we read in the article earlier. Pardon the large advertisement here, but I want to get down to scroll down some. Meanwhile, just the top 20 corporate pension funds are underfunded by $100 billion, and he goes through that list here. It's hard to see. I encourage you to take a look at the article itself. So what happens when these massive corporate obligations become so underfunded that they can't possibly ever be fixed? As the 400,000 pensioners in the Central States pension plans are too familiar, the obligations get handed over to the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, PBGC, an entity which is nearly bankrupt in itself, at which point payouts are slashed, leaving retirees with about half of the monthly income they expect in retirement. That is the biggest issue here, is that do you believe that these individuals will be able to take a half of a cut of what their monthly income is, especially at the ages that they're retiring at? Things have been rough for the Russell Belt, but this was particularly powered punch in the pocketbook for Burrow, who started in the trade at 19 and worked 36 years before opting out for early retirement. This is giving an example of an individual who's led to believe that, hey, you work for 30-some years, you'll be able to take care of it the rest of your life. The sagging industry doesn't care enough younger workers to pay for retirees like Burrow, whose pension plan is in what the U.S. Treasury Department calls critical and declining status. And again, he highlights this for the coal miners. Burrow and the 400,000 members of the Central States Pension Fund are the canaries in the coal mine as far as the pension cutbacks go. Again, I encourage you to take a look at this. Again, it stuck out for me for Dupont. Pensions are just beginning to start to show their cracks. They've been showing cracks for a little while now, but they're going to become mainstream news latter part of this year, especially next year. Until my next video, I'm out.